Welcome to session 8. Now, one of the things that I've really been fascinated with is the methodologies in which we can capture existing assets or existing buildings in faster processes. Gone are the days where we have to go out with tape measures and manually measure every single space and room. We need new, faster ways in which we can capture this information from site and then actually convert it into the model in Archicad. So today, we got David Delgado Vendrell from DDV, openBIM Solutions, from Barcelona in Spain. And this is his first presentation of 2 today. And today he's going to be talking about the processes and methodologies of using point clouds and then converting them into models using in Archicad. So take it away, David.
Hello everybody, and Nathan, thanks for your kind introduction and also the chance to participate in such a stunning event. So let's start with this session called Pointing to the Clouds, Scan-to-BIM. What is this session about? I'm going to show you the workflow using our beloved Graphisoft Archicad tool, but from the out-of-the-box features regarding the point cloud solution that this BIM authoring tool is already providing from some versions ago. In one particular type of projects within our industry, the construction industry, called scan-to-BIM projects, the laser scanning projects. I will show you the importance of the client information requirements. In our case, it's our maximum driver. It's very important how the client in this type of projects is driving in your activity, and how also to deal with the expectation of your client once you are delivering those models based on these point clouds. So it's about accuracy of those required deliverables. And which are the key learning objectives of this session? So understanding the benefits using laser scanning technology, in this case from the perspective of Graphisoft Archicad, and how to create those models, some tips and tricks using the out-of-the-box Graphisoft Archicad features, and also how to perform this activity applying a more efficient workflow. So let's start with the session. As I told you, this use case that I'm going to show you is scan-to-BIM 1, which means that in the very beginning we receive laser scanning data, which we have to process. And once this process is done, then we are able to start with the information modeling within our native environment, the Graphisoft Archicad one. So we receive things like this. So it's a point cloud. In our case, the clients we have, they are working in black and white point clouds, but this could be improved using color ones. But it's an interesting exercise to show you how even using a black and white point clouds, you can really achieve high quality information models. So in the end, you will get something like that. No matter if you are exchanging a native file, or in, such as in our case, exchanging information models based in an open data schema, such as IFC files. So this is our particular approach here. We combine, because we are applying it in any activity within our company. It's an openBIM based workflow as well. And for those who still don't know about this, as a summary, we are creating information models from a native environment. In this case, of course, our Graphisoft Archicad. We could call it also digital prototype. And traditionally, we are creating different types of documentation, such as 2D drawings, schedules, spreadsheets, whatever traditional documentation. But additionally, in applying this workflow, what we are doing is creating another type of information models based on an open data schema called IFC, Industry Foundation Classes. And each of those models must be created following a particular or particulars BIM uses, which means that when we are exchanging information with other disciplines, we are using those models as a reference for our own design activity. So if we are an architect and we are sharing an IFC of our design with a structural engineer, they will use our model as a reference to keep creating the structure of the same building or asset. Okay, so in this workflow, the next step is checking those models, coordinating them, and if we find some issues, we should communicate to the authors how we are doing that. So in the openBIM approach, what we are doing is also using another open standard called BCF, BIM Collaboration Format, which enable us to identify and report any kind of issue model related, and if there is some change request, we will send it to the original author of that model. And this is how this works as a cycle for each of your modeling tasks. So this is our background, and this is what we are applying in our scan-to-BIM projects as well. But if we have a client and we have some requirements, of course, we need to demonstrate to our client how we will work, how we will perform our activity in the next weeks, months, etc. Right? So there is that document, the BIM execution plan. I will not go deeper into that, of course, because most of you already know, of course, about this. But what I want to highlight here is that we are not writers. We are not making big books. What we are doing here is answering our client, in this case with a spreadsheet, quite a straightforward one, in which we are including just the minimum information that is useful for them and also useful for us, aligned with our contract. So this is just an excerpt of some of the section of this BIM execution plan, such as the particular BIM uses that we will cover during our activity, or information about coordinates and origin points, and so on. So this is a very important document, but in our case, it's a quite simplified one that we share with our client in our document management system. And I also want here to highlight that, as in many other construction industry activities, right, but especially in scan-to-BIM projects, this activity is a very high process-driven activity. This is just an example of one of our process maps regarding quality management, because in this type of projects, one of the most important steps is the model checking, because we are checking our models very often in different layers, in different moments within the whole process. So this is something that it's in the core of this activity, not just from the consultancy point of view, also from the client point of view, because in this case our client is also participating within this model checking activity, as I will show you later on. So, because we have a need of tracking any of our information exchanges, of course, attached also to the BIM execution plan, we also create a simplified one, but a master information delivery plan. In this case, we are using the same digital environment, cloud environment that we are sharing with our client. In this case, it's Microsoft SharePoint, which allows us also to apply metadata based approach, which is very useful. We could cover it in another session. So we are using that environment to create these master information delivery plans, and we are using the different content types within our system to apply it to each particular project. And then depending on which is your framework here, in our case it's we usually, because we are working internationally, we apply the ISO 19650. Also, sometimes we are trying to align it to the updates that the UK National Annex is doing, because most of times they are quite interesting. So that's what we share with our client in each of our, no matter if they are intermediate or final deliveries. And this is the diagram that shows our basic workflow in this scan-to-BIM activity. I will go step by step in the next slides, but here, as you can see, one of the first things that we receive once the contract is approved, of course, is laser scanning files. In which format? In LIDAR based format, LAS. So here what we do is download several gigabytes of files from an FTP that our client shares with us. Our collaborators here, Scanface, they take all those large data sets and they start processing them using different tools. I will show you in the next slides. And once it's done, then we take as openBIM consultancy all those files, and then we process some part. I will show you which part, and the other is already prepared to start working within the Graphisoft Archicad environment. Once everything is set up, you can start modeling, and this is what we will show you today. And at the end of this process, what you will deliver is, in our case, IFC models. So starting with this process, as you can see here, our partners start with this pre-processing, trying to integrate or align all those dozens of and even hundreds of individual scans, LAS format ones, into one single model. They are doing this using this software from Firoscene, and once they have everything integrated in one single model, what they do, and this is a very important and crucial activity, is debugging all elements that they have no interest, especially when terrain is involved, but it's also about vegetation or some other facilities in the surroundings of your asset, etc. Or even some effects due to the sunlight or mirrors or etc. So this is a very important, crucial task, and it's also done using Firoscene. So after this, from that single model, this is when our partners need to coordinate with us, and we need to define a partition strategy, especially because we are using another tool from the BIM authoring site, which has some constraints. And Archicad, as any other tool, has some of them. In our case, it's especially related to the file size. So this is one of the constraints that our partner has to apply to this partitioning task. So usually it's the constraint is files no bigger than 2 gigabytes, if possible 1.5 maximum, at least nowadays. And the other constraint to proceed with this partitioning is, of course, the type of asset, the type of, if it's a building, usually we are splitting that point load by floors, but sometimes if the building is quite big, I remember a train station that we have modeled. It was, I think that 18,000 square meters. So we have to define a clear partitioning strategy, defining different areas within the same floor, etc. They are doing this using our Autodesk Recap, and as outcome, they create an open file E57. So from this point, a particular thing, especially even before the contract is approved, that you have to deal with within this type of projects is about client requirement, right? And in this case, it's about the accuracy that they expect to receive from what you will do. But because they know that they have invested on this laser scanning activity, which from, of course, their point of view, it's about high accuracy, right? But one thing is about what you have as a client once the laser scanning expert is providing you a point cloud, and the other is creating an information model based on that. So how to make this transition? So it's about the tolerances that are included within this contract. This is just an example of some of the projects that we are doing with some clients. For example, this client here requires us that for hard and flat surfaces, we can apply a maximum tolerance of 20 millimeters. And with uneven surfaces, it's more flexible with 50 millimeters. This could seem that it's not accurate, but honestly, in our experience and also our clients' experience, the outcomes using or making information models applying these tolerances are totally suitable for the purposes that are included in the BIM execution plan of the further professionals that will work with our models. So this is something that has to be included in any scan-to-BIM contract, or at least coming from the client requirements. This is another example of how these requirements come from our client. This is an excerpt. For example, here you can see how this particular client is requiring outdoor walls, retaining walls, freestanding walls, bigger than 15 centimeters width are to be modeled as volume elements. This is another stuff. Sometimes your client will not use BIM-based terminology. So you also have to deal with that, because we are using a particular terminology from our wall, right? And they are using probably another, but you have to find an alignment between both, right? Another requirement example, areas that cannot be modeled. For example, due to the lack of point cloud information, shall be marked in the model. The method for this shall be proposed by the supplier. This is crucial. I will show you later in another slide how we are dealing with this. And this is very, very important for us, because it changes the way how we are modeling, but it also becomes a very, very useful tool for the client, because they will manage models that will communicate a lot of things, very useful things for further purposes. And this is another example. In this case, it's regarding 2D requirements for the DWG outcomes. For example, requirements regarding layer structure, room labels, or materials, depending on which are the further purposes that other disciplines will make using our models. Okay. And also here, another requirement regarding those elements that has some kind of lack of information, point cloud information. So they require us to mark in the plans with an appropriate symbology on a separate layer or color, or something that you agree with your client. Also, this is of course depending on not just the level of maturity of your client, but sometimes, for example, in this case, this is some kind of level of definition matrix here that our client, which is not BIM, they are not experts on BIM, but they know about that. They share with us these 3 levels of definition. This is their way to communicate with you, and you have to be able to react to that, you know. And sometimes it's not so accurate as you would like, but you have to compensate that, asking them for some additional layers of requirement. And in this case, their way to show us what they really want, it's using images. And it could seem something not quite serious, but honestly, this is very, very straightforward for us to understand which is the level of definition, in this case, in terms of what should be modeled and not, from our client. And of course, we don't have one image, we have dozens of them, but this is very, very useful for us. At the end of this initial process, once our partner, the laser scanning expert, has delivered us the E57 files, we upload all of them into our document management system, and we have a set of point clouds, such as the one that you are that you see here. And as you can see here, this is the file size of, this is a whole set of point clouds for one particular scan-to-BIM activity, for one asset. And as you can see here, some of them are almost 2 gigabytes, but some of them less than. It depends, of course, about the asset geometry. Okay. And this slide wants to highlight the particular case of the terrains, the surroundings of our assets or buildings. This is a particular case in which point cloud or the scan-to-BIM based on this type of point clouds needs a particular pre-processing before starting to work with those E57 point clouds within Archicad. In this case, these are the tools that we are using to make this transformation. It's about making an additional cleaning activity, but also has the aim of having a more efficient in terms of software performance object within Archicad. In this case, we use the cloud compare tool, and also Rhinoceros and the Grasshopper tool, and also the bridge with Archicad to ultimately have an object here that in most of cases what we do is convert it into a morph, because we have to also split this object in several parts, but not in all the our projects. And to create this boundary and level curves, we are also using Grasshopper, but it depends on which are the client requirements, because each project in this case is different, because it changes depending on which are the BIM purposes to be performed by further professionals. So once we have the whole set of point clouds, terrain ones and the different floors of our building, then we start importing in our Archicad file which is based in our particular template, of course, and we start importing E57 files. This is a feature that Graphisoft Archicad has from several versions now. And the first thing that you have is the creation of an LCF file, a library container file, and then as you can see here, you can choose how to place this file within your model. In our case, what we do is we rely on the coordinates of our initial point, because this is a client requirement. We sometimes work in absolute coordinates, sometimes in relative ones provided also by the client. So every project is different. But we rely on those files. So what we do is to import directly this point cloud within Archicad, and what we do is to also establish the Z value. In this case, this example here is based on an absolute coordinate, and this is one of the first steps that you do here. Just one particular thing to highlight here, it's as a tip, it's quite useful. This is what we do. We store those different LCF files in Microsoft OneDrive, which is our work in progress cloud repository, and we share those files. But if you are working with the BIM Cloud, Graphisoft BIM Cloud solution, you could do something similar, but we are not using BIM Cloud in our case. So another tip here that I want to highlight when working in scan-to-BIM projects using Archicad is the layer management. Of course, layer management is always important, but here layer management is used especially to store those point cloud objects. Where we are storing those objects? We are storing them in two different layers. One is called point clouds off, and the other is point clouds on. We are using that to switch which objects will be visible and which are not. This is, as you can understand, due to the size of those objects. So we are always trying to have only the object that we need to model some particular area of our model, and the others are off. So we need to work with layers and layer combinations to achieve that. Quite easy to do. Then another initial important part is to establish the different levels. How we are doing that? We are using the section tool to do that, and we define the different levels. Of course, in the real world, there is no 100% flat floor, but we need to analyze, first of all, the full building. And then we have to create a strategy and finally choose which are the main levels that we want to, in the end, convert to IFC building stories, because we are exchanging IFC-based models, right? So another important tip that I want to share with you here is the use of, because remember that we are using the out-of-the-box point cloud features in Archicad. We are not using any plugin, we are not using any third-party tool. So we are using the Marquee tool and the floor plan code plane. And this is one of our best friends, the 3D connection device for, in my case, the left hand, which allows us to go quite fast. So this is a very, very important tip, especially from a software performance improvement perspective, and also a time-saving one. And this is a real demonstration of which is the flow of this movement when you are applying, you are in the end cropping your point cloud. Another important tip is using the view map. As you already know, the reality it's not 100% vertical, and there are different things that happen through the vertical axis. So you need to define different floor plans in different ranges. So we are using view maps to define those ranges. We apply the viewport settings with different filters to each of those cloned viewports. So this is how we are quickly changing from one to another and modeling the different objects of this model. This is another feature from the out-of-the-box ones in Archicad, the graphic override combinations, of course. And we are using this just highlighting with very different colors when we are combining the point cloud and our model. And this is very, very useful. There are a lot of other graphic override combinations that you can use, and this is just one example. And this is about quality management as well. We are using an issue tracking platform because we are applying the openBIM approach here using the BIM collaboration format as our way to communicate the issues that as the modelers we are fixing from the ones that our client is detecting or sending us new requirements or some things that we should fix once we are delivering in our intermediate deliveries. And these are the IFC outcomes, just an example. As you can see here, this is an IFC. In this case, is visualized using this tool being called Zoom. This is a finished model. As you can see here, there is no roof. This is because in these project requirements, they require us to model just those things that will remain in the building when the next experts here working using our models will perform refurbishment. So we don't need to model everything, of course, we just need to model what our client is requiring. So sometimes we create some kind of Frankenstein models, but these are totally aligned to our client requirements. So here, what we do is also including in our model sets of properties which enable our client to have a more granular information models. They can, for example, in this case, identify which objects in this model are or has some kind of lack of source information, sometimes because of noise within the point cloud, sometimes because of some shadows within also the laser scanning activity. So there are different cases, and we create custom property sets that we include in the IFC schema-based file. And this is how we work with our clients. And also, to finalize this session, I want to show you how we work with the 2D outcomes directly from the Graphisoft Archicad file. So this is nothing complicated, but this is something that, of course, to take quite care using the DWG translators as well, but also the layer combinations. And as I mentioned before, we are highlighting, same way as we are doing with the 3D models, we are highlighting, in this case, using another color, in this case, a red one, those elements that has some particular lack of source information. So these are the 2D drawings that our client is receiving from our work. So I hope that you have found this session interesting. And now I will hand you back over to Nathan for the questions and answers. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks very much, David, for that great presentation. Point clouds are a thing that we're getting our hands on a lot more on projects, and needing to process them and the ways in which we can process them is becoming more and more critical in terms of how we can deal with them. Now, let's duck back to the last session, and there was a question regarding the ability to handle point clouds in Archicad in terms of how you would deal with it from meshes. Do you want to just comment on that?
I cannot hear you, Nathan.
You cannot hear me. You cannot hear
me. Now again, I lost.
You can hear me
seconds.
now. All right. So I disappeared. That's good. I probably can be heard in one end because there's two microphones running at this end here, so that I can broadcast and talk to you. So
now I can hear you.
Zoran asked in the previous session, is it possible to manipulate the point cloud in Archicad with the help of Grasshopper? So he's talking about registration and coordination, system coordination in Archicad, which is the things that you covered off on. But do you think that you covered off on that well enough in that session? Or do you just want to kind of comment directly on that Zoran's query?
Could you repeat the last part of your question, please? Last part, just the last.
Do you have an answer to Zoran's question at all in regards to?
I have. It's an interesting question because in this case, these black and white point clouds, this is what our client is providing us, and the advantage working with color ones, it's quite easy. When we are working in black and white, what we need in parallel, our client is also providing us that. It's several sets of images, not just normal ones, also 360 ones. So what we are doing is always working in parallel. So once we are working with color point clouds, in some cases, not all of them, of course, because there are also shadows and so on, because of the type of work on site, you can skip the use of 360 images because the point clouds itself is providing you meaningful information to enable you to model. So this is more or less the main difference working on this type of files. But we wanted here to highlight that with the minimum that a client can provide you, which is a black and white one, because the technology and of course the prices of all these devices are different, you can achieve high quality works working on that, because ultimately what the client is expecting is an information model for further refurbishments or whatever. And then the second question of Dinata, I think, is there an automation to converting these Archicad elements, walls, column, pipes? Okay, this is the most desired stuff in the world of scan-to-BIM. Or is this still done with manual tracing? Our workflow is 100% manual, and because, of course, in our opinion, there are still not, let's call it, mature enough tools in our market to apply it consistently. And at the same time, it's about talking about requirements, it's about workflows and methodology. This type of work, in our opinion, the core of our work is the method that you apply. And this method means that the people working on that scan-to-BIM team has to do a lot of manual tasks based on their decisions. This does not mean that automation cannot help you, of course, and we hope that will help us the next years. But nowadays, in our opinion, the maturity is still not helping us.
There's a tool that's available that connects directly with Revit, and I'm really good colleagues with the guy who looks after this product, and I can't remember the name of the product, but it is actually really good at automating and modeling within. So basically, it sucks up the point cloud, it has machine learning built into it to understand what certain elements are, and can model half of the walls for you and structure and services. I can't remember what it is though, and my brain is, and I'll write it in the comments shortly once we jump off this call and I remember what it is. But There is a tool that's available. Unfortunately, at this point in time, it's available for Revit only, and I've pestered them, introduced them to.
I think it's Clean Edge or something like this. I don't remember.
Clear Edge 3D.
Clear Edge, yeah.
Yes. So have you played with Clear Edge 3D before?
Yeah, our partners have tried it because they are Autodesk users.
Yes.
And in our opinion, that's why I made this statement, because it's still not enough to automate the whole process at all, and still you need to apply always. I also mentioned the effort making the model checking, and when I say model checking, it's about object checking. It's so huge. Then you are even, of course, you know that there is a machine doing something for you, a part of that, but you have to spend also time checking all that, because the client will not distinguish which elements are done by the client. It's a client that it's not BIM based, and the client is just checking, there is the window that I need, because I need to refurbish that facade, you know. So we are very, very client oriented, and although we like technology, and of course without technology you cannot do anything of this, we don't lose the focus of our client here. Otherwise, this love for technology would make lose the main objective here.
Yeah. So Jorge said he's seen some plugins to automate the conversion into Archicad. Carol's then commented about Point CAD plus Archicad add-on. I think Vanada's then said she's tried that, but manual tracing still seems to be the best, so it seems to be consistent across that.
Yeah.
Mats has an interesting question regarding testing with simpler scanning devices like the 360 consumer cameras. Mats, I'm talking in about, I don't know, 15 hours time. It's still a long way away. In the last session about my experiences with a Ricoh Theatre V camera. But have you used any of the consumer-based scanning 360-degree cameras alongside the likes of Matterport or MetaReal or the like? Or
no, we have not used them. And at the same time, what we wanted to highlight here is how, with out-of-the-box Archicad features, you can achieve high-quality works, and then you can add several sets of tools that can improve your performance in some cases. But in our experience, what we have done since the very beginning is to boost the use of the out-of-the-box in a way that nowadays we are quite satisfied with what we have got using just the out-of-the-box. And this, honestly, when you are a business, this is something quite interesting to achieve, because of course these sets of tools most of times are not for free, of course. There's another question, I think.
Well, I just want to talk about the one from Lopez about Insta360 being different technology than a point cloud. Yeah, that's right. That's photogrammetry. So. Photogrammetry.
This is the next step. I remember the question about the black and white and color.
Yes,
this is
from Bernardo.
The next one. But then we have the constraint of our BIM authoring tool, which is Archicad. Archicad is still, in that sense, not able to load all this interesting way of see in the 3D model at the same time, the point cloud, the 360 images. This could be very, very useful. But again, if with just the black and white you can model high accurate information models, imagine with a color one within Archicad, which is possible. And then, of course, even if you have this photogrammetry there, you have it in the case of Archicad. Another stuff is when you are not working in Archicad, when you are working with other vendors, right? but within the Graphisoft environment, you need to run in parallel with another window. Of course, now we are surrounded by windows, especially last month, right? So another program showing you, in the end, more information about what you are modeling. But here, the modeler is doing a big manual effort. No matter how many sources of information you have, you always are making decisions, and not just once, again and again. Here, I am not highlighting this in this session. I have another one, thanks to Nathan, talking about Agile. But this is another methodology related to project management that it's totally necessary to run these projects. It's not just about technology, guys. Not just about that. So, yeah.
So David, there's some more questions. One from Joel. He just wants you to elaborate on the programs that you've used as part of your manual workflow a little bit more. So that could be a long-winded question. That could be a session in itself.
Well, yeah, I think it's, Nathan is right. Could be a session in itself. Even I just prepared a single slide to that, but it's just about the terrain models. As probably you could see, once our partners have pre-processed the leader scans and convert them into E57, they are already quite clean in terms of noise and other stuff that we don't need, and it's bad for us. But the only type of point clouds that need an additional processing are the ones coming from the surroundings and terrain. These still are not suitable, those E57, because they need a closer look from the modeler's perspective, you know? So then we need to elaborate a workflow. In this case, it's the workflow that we have found using the tools that we are familiarized in, which are World Compare, Rhinoceros, Grasshopper. We are using some plugins with the Grasshopper, that there are dozens of them. This is a quite active community providing stuff for point clouds. So here we are lucky, the Archicad users, because thanks to the bridge between Grasshopper and Rhino, as our friends from Enzyme were also highlighting, right? We have like the spin-off of our main movie, which is Archicad, right? And then we can include a set of several features. And this is quite hopeful, because of course we can expect that Graphisoft will make improvements. We hope so, in terms of scan-to-BIM features within the BIM authoring tool. But what we see nowadays is the bigger progress. It's in other algorithmic based ones. So yeah, I could elaborate it more, but then we should go into the details. But I invite you to write me if you have some interest, and I will be very happy to answer you.
And Carl's got one last question there about streaming point clouds into Archicad. Any developers out there know it's possible? And Eric's just replied that Leica's looking into that. So we've run out of time, but it's time to have a 5-minute breather, a 5-minute step away, stretch from our computer as we move into the next session. But David, thank you very much for presenting this first session, and for the people that are out there watching, look forward to seeing you in a few hours' time once again to share your second session on Agile Project Management, which I think is something of great value for people to watch as well. So thanks very much, mate, on this first session.
Thanks to all of you. Take care.
And we'll see you again in a few minutes' time.